Hey everyone, so in this video we are going to learn about the Z-index in CSS, what is Z-index, how it really works, and what are the misconceptions we assume about Z-index or when we are writing the code. So let's talk about Z-index. So why we use Z-index? We use Z-index to overlap elements over each other. Like there are three div elements, div1, div2, div3. Assume it is like div element 1, div element 2, div element 3. And I want to overlap div element 2 to div element 1. So I will provide a CSS property like Z-index, Z-index any number which will be greater. I will provide the Z-index property to both the divs, div1 and div2. But the Z-index of div2 will be greater than the Z-index of div1. So what it will do, it will overlap. So the div property of second div property will overlap the first div property. So this is all about Z-index. But the concept here, it is not like this. The concept here is different, and it's the biggest misconception about Z-index is that the element having more Z-index will overlap the element having less Z-index. But this is not the concept. Concept is something else, and we will look into it. What is the concept? We will solve the problem by doing it. I will write a code where I will first show the problem, how it generally occurs, and how to solve it with the main concept, the real concept behind applying the Z-index. So the next screen is coming of the VS Code, where I will write the code and I will show you how to solve this Z-index problems. So let's dig into it, and I will meet you in the end of the video. So right now I'm in the VS Code, and let's create a new file, and let's create here, let's write the Z-index. And let's link the styles file. Now let's create a new file, Z-index with styles.css. Now before showing you the concept of Z-index, I want to show you what Z-index really, on which concept Z-index works. So the Z-index CSS property sets Z of a portion and descends or flex overlapping element with larger Z-index covered with the smaller one. So it's what I told, that the element or this section having larger Z-index will overlap the section having less Z-index. But this is not the concept. The main line is here, the stack level of the box in the current stacking context. Now this is the main concept. The Z-index uses the stacking context to overlap the elements. Okay, so this is the main concept behind. It's not like the element having greater Z-index will overlap the element having less Z-index. Yes, that's correct. That's perfectly. You can say it. You can say it in their terms, in the lame language, that yeah, Z-index. But this is not the concept. The concept is the stacking context. Now, what is the problem we face many a time, that using Z-index is because of this concept we are not applying it in our code. So let's come to the most important part where it will solve our problem. So let's assume in this example every position element creates its own stacking context. So this is the most important line, and it's the concept of Z-index. See, every positioned element creates its own stacking context. What it says is that when you apply Z-index property, that element or that section will automatically create its own stacking context. Okay? Because of the position of Z-index value, the hierarchy of the stacking context is organized as follows. Now see this example, right? See this example and let's read this. Root div1, div2, div3, and div3 has three elements, three child elements, div4, div5, div6. Now read this, it's most important. It is important to know that div4, div5 and div6 are the children of div3. So the stacking of those elements is completely resolved within div3. Once stacking and rendering within div3 is completed, the whole div3 element is passed for stacking in the root element with respect to the siblings div. So what it says that if we provide z index to div1, if we provide z index to div2, if we provide z index to div3, so all these three elements will create a stacking context for its own z index. Now let's assume that we create a z index for div4, div5 and div6, right? So first it will resolve the z index of three values of these three values because they are the child elements of div3, and then div3 will resolve within other div2 and div1. So that's how z index work. First it will resolve the stacking context of its own child values, then the remaining parent values. So that's how the that's the main concept behind the z index, that z index uses stacking context. Now let's move to the VS Code and we will look into the code at what is the problem we face and how we can resolve. So right now we are in the VS Code and let's create here three sections. First header, then let's say second is main. Inside main, let's create a div circle, right? So here we have three sections. First is header, second is main, and div.class having class circle is the child element of main. And let's styles them, right? Okay, so we have styles them and let's look. And now let's give the z index of all three elements, and let's first give z index to header, let's say 2, right? And let's give z index to main, let's say 1, and let's say z index to the circle, say a greater number 9999. Okay, now let's open it. It's how looking right now. So according to the z index, like if we see this, z index having the larger value will overlap the z index having the lower value. Now header section have a z index 2, right? Then main section have a z index 1, and then circle class having circle having section 999 triple lines, right? So it should have here the circle should have overlapped both the elements. Now here what is happening right now, circle is overlapping the main section, but it's not overlapping the header section. Instead of having the z index number greater than 2, right? It's clearly that 9999 it's greater than 2. It should have overlapped the header section, but it's not overlapping the header section. Now why is that? Is because we just saw that we just read here. It is important to know that div4, div5, div6 are the children of div3. So the stacking of those elements is completely resolved within div3. So what here we wrote is circle div this div is the child of main, right? And header is the parent. So let's write here div1 or say section element 1, right? let's here note element 2, and let's say here write element child element of div of element 2. Okay, so now you will understand. So giving it the circle, giving the z index property this circle div section, first it will resolve the child elements as we read, then it will resolve the parent elements. So what's happening right now here is, like if we go into then see this, here you are seeing this, it is not overlapping the header because this circle section, this div, like if I show you here all, this div class circle is the child of main. So first it will resolve this child and then it will resolve the header. So to solve this problem, so basically to solve this problem, we have to use, to solve this problem, either we will remove this from here and paste it here in the header section. So this should work, right? Yeah, it's overlapping both the elements, but this is not looking good because this I want this in the body of this, in the main body of the section. I don't want this in the header section. So let's copy and back. So what we will do, we will remove the z index of main section. Why? I will tell you why. Once you remove the z index of the main section, now you can see clearly it is overlapping the header and the main, right? Now what happens here, when you remove the z index of main, so when you remove the z index of main, the stacking context of the main automatically gets removed, right? So there are only two stacking contexts are applied here, one of header and one of circle. Now the z index will compare itself and the higher z index will overlap the lower z index, right? So this is the concept. First it will resolve within the child element. So we have to make this child element a root element, right? So to make it a root element, we have to remove the z index of the main so that it can be made the root element. And after making it a root element, now we can compare the z index. Now we can compare the z index of this root element with the z index of other root element. And we can clearly see that z index of this circle class is more than z index of header. Now it's overlapping. So what was the problem? The problem I will show you again if I uncomment it. The problem it was overlapping. Instead of having the large z index, it was not overlapping the header section. So we remove the z index stacking concept of main function. Then this div becomes the root. This div element now behaves like a root element, and now it will compare it with the other root elements in the HTML document. After comparing it, it overlaps the other elements having less z index. So this is all about the z index. We have property. I will give you the link in the description of this URL so you can read this out. This is the most important concept. So I hope you understood the concept of z index. If you like the video, please do like it, share it, subscribe it to the channel, and share it to your friends who are having problem with z index. So keep improving yourself, keep sharing your knowledge, and I will meet you in the next video with a new concept. Have a good day.